right. So Skip will be joining us soon, but today I have built up a little fun educational seminar on risk control strategies. This sounds boring, but what it is this we're meant to use our risk audits to develop projects. So in your guys' world, there are like a million audits to have out there. And when you hire partnering with a cybersecurity firm, it's great because they'll go in and they'll audit a bunch of things. But if you partner with a cybersecurity firm, they're going to develop work for themselves. Some of it will be for you, but if you do like a quick little security audit, like a NIST audit yourself, how do you develop projects for your teams, and what does that mean? So we've talked about it in the past, like I think it was back in early July, where we mentioned that with risk strategy, with the NIST report, there are projects that come out of that. And we kind of went over quickly what that audit does and how to use it, so you can thin it down and you can focus on items such as just identifying assets or just focusing on disaster recovery. What I want to give you guys is an easy understanding of how audits work or how the control families work, so that when you walk into a client and you're using our simplified report, you can kind of guarantee like, hey, I really want to focus on access controls or role-based access controls for my client, because they're having a big problem with that. We've seen a number of breaches in the past year because vendors were given inappropriate roles, and we don't want that to be us. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of walk you through a couple of the important access or control families. And then next week, I'll walk you through two more, and then we'll do a third week for the final two. So there are over 20 controls in the NIST framework that you can like hyper focus on. Like you could spend an entire quarter just focusing on one control family. And so just to kind of give you a breakdown here, like, let me share my screen. I'll do it the fancy way. So kind of give you a feeling, there are 20 families. And so we break down security audits into these 20 areas. Now, depending on which version of the NIST framework you're using, you might see a little bit of difference here. So we broke it down even further, and are just following the NIST framework of 5 groups. So you'll see when you look at your audit that all of these are broken down into the 5: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And then within that, you have your minor controls, AC, AT, in each one of these. Today, what I really want to focus on is 2 that I am familiar with, that I like to show people, is AC and CM. And so what those 2 are, it's access control and change management. And between those 2, or configuration management, sorry, I'm old. And between those 2, you get projects focused on things. So with access control and configuration management, you see a lot of focus on how things are to be done. So we kind of see these as being in the architecture pillar. So when you run a risk audit, when you run a NIST audit, it's going to result in projects in the other 3 pillars of your organization. So to clarify, when you run risk, when you run cybersecurity audits, if you have a third party do it, they're going to generate a list of things that need to be done, and they're going to be broken up into different families in these 20 groups, or depending on the kind of audit they're doing. What are they fixing? With ours, what we're doing is we're taking a risk audit, and it's putting weight behind why should your client care about these things. So do they really care about multi-factor authentication? You can sit there and talk to them till you're blue in the face, But if you do an access control audit and you show them that per NIST guidelines, federal guidelines, this is a standardized body, you should have this in place. And that's what makes this project over here. I know this is a little blurry for you guys, especially for you, Michael. You might get your extra big bifocals on. The thing is, like, these risk audits are going to kick off a project. Your client doesn't care that this is identification asset management. They don't care. What they care about is that you found that there has never been an inventory done of their systems. And if you don't do that, then we don't know any rogue devices on the network. And we know that breaches happen when we have somebody's daughter's computer still gets on Wi-Fi and it's right next to the finance department. Well, what if her computer gets infected? So you can feed projects that way. Like, hey, we need to come in and do an inventory. Now, most of you during your onboarding should be doing some kind of inventory. If you're not, I don't know what you're doing in an MSP, because you need to know what devices you're working with. So for that, that's asset management. That kicks off a project that should be done already, but you might need to do a revamp, or maybe you want to do a deep dive on it. Maybe under here, it shows that physical devices and systems within the organization are inventoried. Now, there's an implicit understanding here that this happens every 12 months, that you have done this every 12 months, that you, within the last 12 months, have gone through and identified the actual inventory there. So with access control and chain and configuration management, what we're really focusing on is we're focusing on where is access control weak. So where is configuration management weak? And between those two, you can actually start developing out pretty large projects. So with a large customer, if you audit the access control family, if you take our larger audit and you just thin it down to the access controls, you can actually sell large customers on a integrated SIEM solution, a log management solution, looking at event logs and alerting. And I know that in the corporate world, I spend about $120,000 a year just for that service. So with access control, you can kick off large projects that result in a lot of extra revenue with large clients. But what about your small clients? What about the five-man shop? Well, if you're doing an access control, if you've identified access control areas that need to be taken care of, for small customers, you can set up your basic event alerting. When was a password typed wrong 3 times? How is that handled? Does the client care? You can bring that up with them. Say, hey, look, if you would like us to make tighter controls on who's accessing your system, we need to do an access control audit. That's just one family. And we can talk through what that's going to do to help you. That's a project. Same thing with change management, or sorry, I keep calling it change management, configuration management. And that's identifying areas where the architecture needs to be standardized. As network Nazis, we do not like snowflakes. We like our switches to have the same configs, same versioning, everything. We like our firewalls to be that way. Again, this is something that's usually handled during onboarding, but there's more to it than that. So you can say every year you're going to go through and look for shadowed rules as a basic service for elite plan members. So you get somebody on an elite plan, they get reviewed for shadowed rules every year. For somebody who is not involved in one of your bigger plans, you can say, hey, look, every year we'll go through and just make sure that everything's running. That small FortiGate 200E or whatever the current series is, we're going to go through and make sure that we match up all of the firewall rules with business needs. And we're going to make sure that all these configurations are similar. We're going to upgrade your baseline image to maybe our hardened one. So these little configuration management things that maybe get overlooked often with customers now can get focused on as projects. And this all sounds kind of boring, but control families in any system allow you to focus on specific areas that you want to deliver. So this week, what I want you guys to think about is, what areas do you think your clients are weak on? Are they weak on, let me pull up that list again for you. I copied it off because I don't have them memorized. Back in my security day, I was much better at memorizing these kinds of things, but today it's just not my primary focus. But with access control all the way down to supply chain risk management, most of us don't care about supply chain risk management at this level. Your clients won't care about it either. But you can look through here, and under each one of these families is a subset of controls that explain more. So when you look at the NIST report that we built for you, and you look at the projects that come out of this, you'll see like ID.am. And so that's asset management under the identify framework. Now, remember, when people are asking about NIST, it is massive. It's not just cybersecurity. It goes across everything. So you're going to see these control families line up with other areas of technology, other areas of business. And there's Skip. So what you have here is IDAM, and this is a project we've identified for you to go in and work with your client on. And you can tell your client, hey, of the identify area, here are the control families affected if we don't fix this. This is not your MSP saying this. This is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or whatever this stands for, saying you got to do this stuff. This is where it's affecting you. So you can focus on just one of these, and you can have a set of projects figured out on this. So what you can do is you can actually change in your service library. You can actually just go ahead and change this NIST Identify Asset Management and the deliverable here. So anytime this comes up in a NIST audit, have the deliverable be something that you can actually put in place. Do you guys lease log management solutions to your customers? If you are one of those third-party resellers for Logarithm or LogLogic or whatever, put it in here. And that way, when somebody comes in and makes the recommendation, like, oh my gosh, they have no asset management, or they have no ability to do access controls, you now can show your clients, hey, for X dollars a month, we can install this device that does this for you. And it's backed by a governing control. So having that independent source say to your clients, you need this, that's going to sell.
Yeah, I think that's, and remember, that's the reason why we did the NIST, is because we didn't want to, we've got lots of security resources that we could have tapped, but we didn't, because we wanted to say, hey, this is the standard. This is not just us. This is not our great security guy that's saying this is a good idea. This is actually, an industry driver. And so that's really good, because it allows that objectiveness that Adam was talking about there.
Do you remember which version of NIST we built this off of?
It's version 1.1, and I'm waiting for another one, because that 1.1 has been out for several years, and they didn't go long between the 1.0 and the 1.1 release. So I'm kind of surprised. Oh yeah, April 16, 2018. Wow. So I am anticipating a release of that, sooner than later. But that, with the HIT membership, when that drops, we will make that update, and so you'll have that as part of your templates. We'll do that work for you.
What I'm trying to show people is, like, you have 853 revision 5.1. That's what this is off of. So in the corporate world, I had to go through every single one of these. It was a pain, and it took us all year.
Yeah.
And this was just our life. So when you have a framework that they're putting all these control families in, it just makes things so much more understandable. So if you really want to go through NIST and read up on all this stuff, feel free. I mean, it's great extra knowledge. they've broken it down. And but that's why we have this in here, is that we have taken, you don't have to do a full 853 audit. You can do a framework audit 1.1, which is what we use. And then we can build something that recommends projects independently that you can run in maybe an hour or two internal. So, but what we're doing right now, Skip, is we're breaking down the control groups and the control families to show like how they work together. Like, so I am taking it from the highest level up here. So when you're working with the NIST framework, you're actually looking at these in the end, but we don't care about all of them. And so I'm showing.
And if we want to drill down into these a little bit further, you can, if you don't already have access, I'm looking at the list of attendees today. Many of you may already have it. Some of you may not. There is a 1.0 version of the NIST assessment. And it incorporates the maturity levels within each one of these controls. It's a lot of work, which is hence why we slim things down for the 2.0 version. But if you have that one client that really needs the in-depth, hit me up and we'll get you connected with that 1.0 resource, and you can go really, really deep. I mean, it's a nice one to bill for a lot of money.
If you do the 1.0, if you have somebody who kind of wants to dive into that and cut their teeth on cybersecurity, has an interest in it, 1.0, that is something that you charge for. You're going to want to charge, to $2,500 to $5,000 minimum for that thing.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work. So I am like, if you look at this is just one control family, we're talking about today. Access control. This is a year of work at any given client. Each one of these breaks down into even more that you can develop projects out of. So when you see what we have done with the overview, if you use this, you owe Skip a beer or something, because
I'll take that.
It was a lot of work to
dark amber
thin this down to meaningful project delivery, so that you can go through and ask the questions very simply. Rather than knowing all 20 families, you can go through and ask 5 areas. And now it makes sense to your client. And that's what sells. Simplicity sells. You need some alliteration there. And so when you have this, now you can kick off projects. And so today, the 2 of the 20 that I was really focusing on are, I guess I can't get feedback from people here.
Mm-hmm.
Access control and configuration management. Those 2 things largely fall under identify, but I call them, when the projects that come out of those are going to be architecture projects. E.g., you're going to discover that when you do your inventory of their network, you're going to find out they have old assets. Well, that's an architecture change. They're going to have out-of-date assets. They're going to have assets that don't match. You're going to have snowflakes that need to die a horrible death. That Linksys router that somebody's using in their conference room, it needs to die. These things are things that you discover. So you get projects off of that are around, how do I stabilize this network? How do I change how they access it?
And if you're wanting to filter that, so the framework, remember, we have services and infrastructure. We look at those in a risk perspective, overall. How do these services or the business or this architecture, how is it at risk? All right. So that's what we understand. But when we go back and we look at this and we identify projects in these, if we're trying to categorize these, the risk assessment will generate projects that need to be done in one of the other pillars. And the easy way to remember this is, if it's business focused, or if it's organizational, sort of deal, obviously that's going to be a strategic initiative. But for everything else, it's going to be what is in their environment, and the what is the architecture. And then the services is how. How do they use the what? The two are very, very closely linked. So if you're trying to identify and manage a how, but you don't have the what defined, you're going to have a lot. You're going to have a lot of challenges. So, but for all of these, whether they come out through identify, protect, detect, respond, or recover, whatever, most likely they're going to be a what are we using, which is architecture, or how we are using it, which is services. So that'd be an easy way to manage those going forward if you want to continue with that framework sort of categorization.
Yeah, and we're gonna continue the next 2 weeks in the community updates is talking through how control families affect our projects. So next week we're going to talk about audit and accountability. So that's AU, and we're also going to talk about IA, identification and authentication. That's another entire control family. And these are more service pillar oriented items. So when it comes to auditing and identifying and authentication, these are things that your employees have to do. Like once a year, you have to go through and audit the inventory, or you have to audit all of the accounts at your customers. A lot of you do this already. You might even have a tool to help you with it. But are you going through the vendors and saying, is this an active vendor? Is this vendor have access to the right areas? What about this third party service account? Are we actually asking it? Or are we just saying, oh, look, it's still good. They've logged in within the last 30 days. Do you have appropriate multi-factor in place? These things that you have to do as a service, just routine items. And you can make them like a third quarter every year item. You can make them a once a quarter. I'm gonna audit all accounts depending on the level of complexity with your client. So if you've got a client with a simple router and 2 PCs, pretty easy to do an access control and configuration management audit on them. You'd be done in like 10 minutes. But if you have somebody with 100 PCs and 3 firewalls, it's going to take you a day. But when are you doing it? You guys have all these fires that you're trying to put out, but you have to schedule time to do this. And so that becomes an additional service that you offer your clients. So if you do have an all-inclusive service, then you can tell them, hey, we have started doing NIST audits for clients on our new service contracts. So just like you guys in our member community, if you're not an HIT member, you don't have access to the risk audit. You don't have access to this NIST audit. So there's a lot of people out there who are MSP or managed service platform members who don't have access to this. If you want access to these reports and to this hard work, you have to be on one of the new packages. That is the strategy we use, and you should do the same thing. When you're talking to your clients that are on legacy agreements, like, hey, everything we do is included. However, we have added on a new branch of our company for NIST audits. If you want access to that, you have to sign up for our new all-inclusive plans. Otherwise, you'll get all the stuff that was included back then. So that's how you sell this as an additional. Like, hey, we're going to charge an extra 20% on contract, but now you get cybersecurity audits every year. You get identify audits every quarter, or configuration management audits every quarter. That's how these result in extra cash, because your client sees value now. Now every quarter they get to look at this new report that comes out. Hey, we're going to deliver this to you every quarter or every year, so you know where you are from a cybersecurity standpoint. Normally, people pay $20,000 to $30,000 to have independent audits done on them every year. We're going to do it as just a 20% fee on top of your existing contract. So you go to one of our new Silver Plus plans, or whatever you want to call it.
Go.
Something shiny. Go talk to your sales guy and have them come up with some new thing like, hey, you're in our all-inclusive plan, but now we have an all-inclusive plan plus security, or an all-inclusive plan plus auditing. The 2022 plans all include this. So when you renew your contract, it'll be for 20% more. Here's why.
Yeah, that annual sort of versioning is becoming very popular. I've seen several members around the globe starting to do that. Hey, here's our 2022 plan. We need to get you ready for that. It is a great conversation when you get someone and you're sitting in the mid, June, August timeframe of 2022, and you're having this conversation with the client, and they're asking, well, can we do this? And you go, well, not really, not without additional fee, because you're on our 2020 plan. Or you're on our 2019 plan. It's really time to update you guys. That's usually a pretty good conversation path to go down to. Clients do tend to receive that a little bit better. So just a little feedback from some experiences I've heard about.
Yeah, and you guys all know this. Like when you walk in, you raise rates on the customer. A lot of times, if it's a loyal customer, there's not too much pushback, especially if you stay under that 20% raise mark. But when you walk in, you show them that they're getting additional value on their new contract. Like, hey, I know you guys are spending $1,500 a month last year. We're bumping that up to $1,750 because we are adding in security suites to all clients. And then they're like, oh, what does that mean? Like, well, and if you want to overwhelm them, you can show them this. Like, we're going to go through the NIST family of controls, and we're going to make sure that you're covered every year. And you're going to get this report in addition to everything else we're doing. For you, this NIST overview report is going to take you a couple extra hours a year. But it's also going to result in additional projects. It's going to result in additional touch points for your client. And it's going to result in that 20% extra revenue that you can charge, because now you're offering a new service. So you're doing the risk pillar with them fully. And that's really what we want to show. And that's why I wanted to break down so you guys understand the control families, that this is a very simplified view. And then when you understand why it says ID.am there, and the client ever asks about that, that's your authority behind you. That the NIST governing body has published guidance if you want to go to an extended guidance. So a full-on audit with all the control families is going to take you forever. But our audits simplify it so clients can make easy decisions and they know what they're getting. Look, it's easy. NIST identify asset management. What are you going to do now? Let me click on that.
And remember that all these sections are editable. The deliverable is, but the category and the description is as well. So if you want to go in there and tweak something so that it makes more sense to that client, you can do that. You're not going to mess with the template in the tool. Your edits here are only within the context of this particular client. So if you need to make something a little more specific, go ahead and do that. And I always recommend change the name if you can up there. Add something to it where it says risk, NIST, identify, put something specific in there for the client to understand, so they really know what they're getting out of it.
Yep. And a lot of things you're already doing. So you can, like, when you're auditing them, that's the beauty of it. You can come down here and you can check off a whole bunch of things because you guys are good at your jobs. You're good MSP. Current state. We've audited their inventory in the last year. Next year in third quarter, you're going to go through and say, hey, did we audit their inventory this year? Oh, crap. We haven't done that yet. We should probably do a once over on their inventory.
Yep.
It's your reminder. So it's future state. Now there's a project out there for you to create a task off of. You can export this out, create a ticket in ConnectWise or Autotask or whatever you're using. And
you can email it out too.
You can email it out and you can say, hey, we need to get this done. And then now you get it done. Once it's done, flip it over to current state and we're done. Yay. Everybody's happy. So this is your risk pillar. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the additional projects that come out of this. So like audit and accountability, identification, authentication are the two control families I want to focus on next week, which are service pillar oriented, things that you have to do. This week, it was access control and configuration management. This largely means that there needs to be asset changes, that there needs to be either roles need to be locked down. Everybody doesn't need admin rights. We need to make sure that we have stable images, stable configurations on all devices, those kinds of things. And again, what's nice is the smaller the environment, the less work there is. Usually, larger environment, more work, which is why you charge more per asset. But this gives you perceived value. It increases your perceived value because now not only are you fixing their firewall, but you're making them more secure, and you're making the protect mark go up.
Yep.
And I'm willing to bet almost every one of you, when you guys go and audit your customers, the recover and respond are going to be low.
Yeah.
Clients don't like to think about those things.
Yeah.
So that's your first two control families. And we will talk about those two: contingency planning and awareness and training, the CP and AT control families. We'll talk about those in 2 weeks. So next week is audit and accountability, identification and authentication, those two control families. And then the week after, we're going to talk about contingency planning and awareness training, and how those result in actionable projects that will result in extra money for you. So if you're project oriented, it's going to result in more cash. If you're all-inclusive plans, it's going to result in more justification for raising your rates. Anything to add, Skip?
No, that's all good. I think this is a good process for us to go through. I know most MSPs don't have a huge security focus. All right. Meaning now we handle security, right? But we're all often very technical. For security for us means, what we do to the firewall, the types of configurations that we do, how we're defining and implementing encryption, all right? All these very technical and obviously very necessary parts to security. But when it comes to managing security, it's much more process driven and procedural. And this tends to be a weak area for us in our MSPs. So having a tool like NIST is as big and as cumbersome as it can be sometimes, I think is a great process for us to walk through, because to be honest, this is not our nature. Okay. Documents and checkboxes here like this is not our nature. So this supplements what we need to do. It provides a very clear and validated process for us to follow through so we can deliver the best services to our clients. And so I think this comes along at a very good time. Obviously, it just seems to grow constantly, the cybersecurity awareness that we need to have with our clients. So this is a great process to help us, again, with that area where we're probably not as strong as we are in others. I mean, if you go out and take a CCNP with a security focus, they've got a whole list of, configurations that have to go through. It's all, hands on the keyboard, sort of active configurations. And it barely touches on so many elements here, but these are just as valid. So a great opportunity to dive in on these.
We're breaking it down to be simple. And that's your clients are going to buy simple. They're going to understand simple. Your engineers may not be security focused, but I bet you every one of them has security in mind. And so these make sense. These are easily justifiable. So when you say, why do you need a new firewall? Well, because. Why do I need to lock down my roles? Well, because. And instead you can say, well, you need a new firewall because your protect score is so low. You're going to get hacked. You're a high risk here. We got to do this, but because of NIST 853.AC family, we got to do it. And if you don't, you're avoiding best practice. So there's an extra justification, extra perceived value there. You already know it's the right thing to do, but this is explaining it to your customers in a meaningful way that they can see. They can literally see that they are in the red zone for the respond. They're only doing 18% of the possible controls for making sure that they can respond to an event. They're only doing 22% of the recommended controls for recovery. These are things that they can see. Now it's not just you trying to justify it. It is NIST justifying it for you. Yep. And now you've got a project that is backed by an independent source. So that is